So this is the new edition of Malta Besieged. It's from Worthington Games. It's got a nice mounted board. Half size, I would say, I'm guessing 22 by 17 inches-ish. I haven't actually measured it. Nice big 1-inch counters. At least they feel like about 1-inch counters. Got a nice linen finish on them. So the objective of the game is to keep the Axis fronts from entering the Malta space and remaining there. And so there's a sequence of play that you can follow on the board. The print is a little small. This looks to be maybe 6-7 point. It's kind of tough on the eyes, but the rule book is nice big print. It's easy to follow in the rule book. What you do with the game is you have a card deck that's going to be in one of 3 different eras. This is the beginning era of the game, the early era. Here inside the tray, I've got the middle era. I can't remember what it's called. Anyways, the middle era of the game. And then you have the late era of the game. A few extra pieces that we'll need as we go along. I love this little insert. It is functional, and there is a nice little plastic cover that will keep everything from rattling around and moving around. So the first thing we're going to do to play the game is you pull a card off the deck and you look at the sequence of things from top to bottom. You can read the title, of course, and then there's, in very small print, the history behind it, which is cool, but be prepared to use a magnifying glass for that. Unless you really got young eyes, that's going to be a little tough to read. We right off the bat see that we have 3 actions that we can take. We're going to be able to, we're going to be advancing the Luftwaffe and the Regio Aeronautica fronts. Now, let me just say something about the fronts. The game begins with only the Italian Navy and Air Force, the Regia Marina and the Regia Aeronautica on the board, and there are start positions marked for them. So the Navy is going to follow this track. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If they pass through the fort, then they end up in the 0 spot. This is not a space, it's a speed bump. So a unit from here to enter here, the Regia Marina would have to roll a die higher than a 3. So 3 or less, and they would have to stay in that space right there, and they would not advance into this space. The Air Force is going to follow 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then the same thing. Got to get past the Malta fort. And this is something that does not begin in play. The fort rating is initially 2. I've taken an action to improve that. It can be improved one more time to raise it up to a level of 4. So that's what's going on with those. Now, there's a couple fronts that are not active. That is the Luftwaffe. It will eventually enter play. And U-boats start over in the Atlantic. There's the 5. It's got to get past Fortress Gibraltar. That's not a space. But you got to roll higher than a 2 for them to move past there to 4, 3, 2, 1, and then the same thing. There's also the North African front. This one becomes increasingly more important as the game progresses, especially once Rommel comes into play. The Regio Esercito, the Royal Army, is beginning right here. It advanced to Sidi Barrani. I forced it back in battle. And so that's basically where things stand right now. There are also a couple of resources in the game. You have military resources. To increase it, you have to roll a die greater than the number printed on the game piece. If you hit the marker in this space, there is an advantage that you will be able to make use of. As long as it's in that space, the advantage is printed on the back of the game piece. Supply, you have to roll higher than a 3 to enhance it. And morale, you got to roll higher than a 3 to enhance it. If one of these markers is in a 0 space, there is a negative effect. It's printed on the board. If all 3 get down to 0, you will lose the game if that is the condition at the end of the turn. That is the definition, I believe, in the game is that Malta is starving. So that would be the end of the siege at that point. If a marker is in 0 and it's supposed to be reduced by 1, you have to reduce one of the others. It's your choice. So that's basically the overall flow of the game. And then what you do with your card is you follow the order of the card from top to bottom. So you read the card title. If I can get my camera to focus, there we go. This one here says that if not yet in play, place the 4 battle value Luftwaffe unit in its number 4 South Sardinia space instead of activating it. And then we will also move the Regia Aeronautica. So that is unfortunate for us. The Luftwaffe is going to get involved pretty early. In my first game, and there's also 2 pieces. There's a 3 version and a 4 version. We're going to use the 4 version per the card text, and we're going to put in South Sardinia as the card directed us, and then we're going to advance the Regia Aeronautica. Once we've done the military section of the card, we move down to the resources section, and we see that we lose 1 supply and 1 morale. Now, not all of these are negative. Some cards will give you these things. So we take our supply, and we take our morale. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the orders, and it says -1 DRM to all resources. What that means is if we want to use any of our actions to increase our resources, which are these 3 tracks at the bottom of the map, there will be a -1 modifier to those attempts. So I can use a -1 modifier on each of these 3 tracks, or I can just put it on this space for all resources. Just as a reminder, what I like to do then, and the game comes with 1 die, but I've got some extras, as we all do. Since I have 3 actions available, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to put 3 dice on the card, showing that I have 3 actions, and as I take them, I take the die off and I use it. Now, what do I want to use these actions for? Well, a number of things I could do. We have a whole lot of choices in this game. This is probably the most robust of the States of Siege games. There's lots of things to do. I can try to improve the Maltese fortifications by rolling a 4 or better. I could force either of these back 1 space by rolling higher than its value, so I'd have to roll 3 or higher. Luftwaffe, I could send them back here by rolling a 5 or higher. Or I could try to enhance our resources by rolling a 3, a 4, or a 5. But bear in mind, there's a -1 die roll modifier, though, so that would actually be a 6, a 4, or actually, no, I'd have to roll a 4, 5, or 6. Yeah, 4, 5, or 6. Well, let's leave the resources alone because of that. Got 3 actions. Let's go ahead and... I think I'd like to do is let's try to force the Regia Aeronautica back. We'll throw 1 die. We throw a 1, which is an automatic failure no matter what. And second roll was a 4, so that'll force him back 1. I got 1 more action. Let's try to get lucky. If I can roll a 4 there, then the Maltese fort will be in a really good place. So let's go ahead and do that. Yes! We can go ahead and flip him over. And then once we've done all of that, then we do the housekeeping. Now, some cards will have a convoy battle instead of what we did with moving tracks around and stuff. Sometimes there will be a convoy battle, and the final resolution of that is one of the things you do as your initial step of the housekeeping phase. You deal with the convoy arrival. We check for victory or defeat. That is not the case. You can win early by forcing all of the access fronts to their highest space track. And by the way, you can force a unit. Let's say we forced the Luftwaffe back, and then we did it again. It would just go into the holding box. The next time it advances, it would come to here. And so if all of the fronts are in their highest spaced position on their track, or if they're in the holding box, that would be an automatic victory for the Allies. Now, that condition could not happen right now because we don't have the U-boats in play yet. So we only have 4 of the 5 tracks in play. Something else I didn't show you in this video because it's not available till the middle section of the game, but you can do raids later on in the game because eventually this counter is going to flip over and become the Africa Corps, and they're a lot more scary, a lot more difficult to deal with. And a marker is going to be placed on this track here, and this becomes a die roll modifier for when you attack the Africa Corps. So if the marker is over here, it becomes very difficult to force this guy back. If he enters into this space here, then this is automatic defeat for the Allies. But what you can do is you can take a raid action rolling higher than a 4 to improve the marker in your favor, making it easier to attack the Africa core. And what that represents is what Malta was doing is providing a base for raids against convoys from Italy to Rommel's army in North Africa. So that's something that'll become more important as the game progresses. As the game goes on, there's even more and more choices. Now, one more thing I want to try, I should have mentioned I could have done, is I could have spent an action to get the Ultra marker. And that's an automatic success. I just spend an action, place Ultra here, and at any point in my game turn, I can use Ultra, roll a die, and as long as I don't roll a 1, I'm good. And I can look one card into the future, or I can place a +1 modifier on one of these tracks. There's a number of options I can do. And then as far as the housekeeping, this becomes ready for the next card. And then I get rid of all of the die roll modifier markers on the tracks and on the various displays. And then I'm ready to go ahead and pull the next card. So unlike if you played other States of Siege games, the cool thing about this one is there's so many different things that you can do. And so there's lots of different paths to victory. You got lots of choices. You also have the Cunningham available. You can use this in a pinch. Once per epic or era, you can flip this marker to its not side and you can cancel the advance of one of the tracks. And that could be a lifesaver at some moment. So you got lots of different ways to keep yourself alive. And I love how convoys work. When a convoy card is pulled, you do all the advancements like you normally would, but then you flip these markers over. And once you flip them over, then you're going to roll a die and you're going to consult the map, which shows you the die roll range that you have to roll to produce a hit on that convoy. And some of these will have a red number, which is a critical hit. That will cause 2 hits on that convoy if you rolled a 5 or 6 and the Regia Aeronautica was in this space. So you take care of that for all of these. You mark those losses on that track there. And then at the end of the turn in the housekeeping phase, you look at the specific convoy that matches the card that you use. And I like to put the counters on the little circular spaces. And then you roll 1 die for every single hit that you took. And so let's say we're doing Operation Substance. We can put 3 markers down here. Let's say that we had 3 hits on that convoy. I roll 3 dice. The first one's a 4. I'm going to take that marker off. If I roll a 4 again, nothing happens because there's no marker there to remove. If the third roll is a 1 or a 2, there's no loss, and I would collect 2 supply from that card, and I would be able to add that to my track down here. So lots of narrative, lots of choices, lots of fun. This, I think, is my favorite of all the States of Siege games. Definitely recommend you check this one out.